All right. So we're gonna do part two of this. The Sumerians, their history, culture, and character by Samuel Noah Kramer. When I first did the first video, which is not on YouTube yet, it'll be on YouTube in the next few days. I did a live on Twitter. Was basically I used AI to verify this many tabs. So now we're going to do the rest of it. Of course, we didn't get halfway through. I try to keep these shows below 2 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and let me see. I should have did it. Yeah, I already got it up. All right. So let me, yeah, I already got it up. So that's good. So we're going to go to the next tab. This one's on page 101. It says, in spite of the fact that Sumer was destitute of metal and stone and poor in timber, the craftsmen of Sumer were among the most highly skilled in the ancient world, although it is not improbable that, at least originally, many of them came from foreign parts to practice their skills in connection with the construction of temples. So basically, I mean, how I'm understanding is that they had different individuals go to different places to learn their engineering, just like we do today, and all that other stuff, and came there and used their knowledge to build their own types of temples. All right, so this is what's I always like to talk about. I always like to talk about pictographic script. I like to talk about the cuneiform script and stuff like that. So this is not all of them, but I'm going to show you some of them. So according to Samuel Noah Kramer, he has these right here. Right there. Okay. And as you can see, the first one is the pictograph for the plow. So here we go. I'm trying to get it right. Here we go. The plow. So you can see how it went from the early pictographic script to the archaic cuneiform sign and the graphic representation or reconstruction, right? Same thing for the sledge, a boat, has two boats actually, chisel, axe, saw, and war mace. So you can see how, like I said, learning the pictographic script is probably where you want to start off first and then go from there to see how things changed. Like I said, yeah, this one has two boats. So it's boat with sails and a boat. So, you know, and then we also have to remember people add their own little, I guess you could say, I was just watching Office Space, their flair to their drawings and stuff like that to make it different. The most popular beverage among the Sumerians was beer, and the drink that rejoiced the hearts and lives of both gods and men, not to mention its medicinal value. So, you know what? I forgot to check, and I need to check. Let me just check real quick before I get too far ahead of myself. If the audio is working, there was one time I had audio issues, not fault of my own, and I did almost a 45-minute show. It's just not fault of my own. Yeah, that's good. All right. So let's see the next tabs. All right. So in the course of the third millennium BC, the Sumerians developed religious ideas and spiritual concepts which have left an indelible impress on the modern world, especially by way of Judaism, Christianity, and Mohammedanism. On the intellectual level, Sumerian thinkers and sages, as a result of their speculations on the origin and nature of the universe. So basically, like I read this is just, it literally said, left impressions on Judaism, Christianity, and other religions, and you can see where their ideas are similar and so on and so forth. That's why some people believe that the Sumerians, or at least the Bible, um, got a lot of its information or repeated the same thing from uh, different sources from different places. Let me. I was just reading this, so I don't miss out on this part before I figure, because it's not on the tab. It's part of the aircraft. That part of the aircraft, part of the. And the reason why I say that, let me jump back real quick. Um, okay, so when it said left impressions, on the religions and modern world, a lot of people believe the Anuna slash Anunnaki came from some planet called Nibiru, and they didn't come from the planet Nibiru. It literally says in their text, and I've gone over it, and I'm going to keep going over it until people start paying attention. In their cuneiform depictions, writings, and artifacts and art and all that stuff, they literally come from the depths of the sea. Enki came from the depths of the sea. He brought into his knowledge to us and gave it. It says they gave it, we get our knowledge from Enki, from the depths of the sea, from him coming from the depths of the sea. I keep saying that because I want too many people believe they came here by some kind of aircraft that, went from a planet Nibiru to here, which orbits our sun every 3,600 years. And that when it gets close enough, when the planet gets close enough to, Earth, they shoot off their little aircrafts and flying out airplanes and ships and all this other stuff, and get here to Earth, and capsules and all this other stuff. But it doesn't say that. And, they say that because Zechariah Sitchin says that. And he says that he puts his sources together from, all over the world, mostly in Mesopotamia, because, he's using their texts and stuff, and says that they come from a planet Nibiru, and nothing says that. That's why Enki is literally in God in a fish suit. You know what I'm saying? And then you do have the Apkallu. I could be saying that wrong, but they Apkallu, the ones with the eagle-like heads and the wings and stuff like that. Those aren't the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki and them are not one and the same. At least how I understand it. That's why they have different names. Matter of fact, it gets more interesting when you learn from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, or their book, the Literature of Ancient Sumer. I think that's the title of the book. But anyway, it literally tells you that the Anunnaki is just a name for a set of gods, right? But the Igigi, they're the great gods. They're actually known as the great gods. And I posted that plenty of times too. Matter of fact, I'll do this real quick. I didn't want to veer too much away from this book, but I do like to show people what I'm saying as I'm saying it, because it's important to me to provide sources, so people can go look for themselves and say, okay, oh dang it went to that, not that. Why did it do that? When I hit search, it went to Antarctica, because I was looking up stuff for Antarctica. All right, okay, so yeah, it's doing it again. Okay, there we go. I want to say, well, let's see. This is why I didn't want to go past it. Let's see. Uh-huh. I hate how you know what? I'll just do it this way. I hate how you do the search is different on the search on Twitter is a lot different than it is on the computer. So I'm gonna have to go through my profile here and I already have it. Let's see, boom, there we go. So what I'll do is I'll repost this real quick here, so that way I can just go to my computer. Should pop up on my profile. Bada boom, bada bang. That's too easy. God, I can't believe I gotta go through all that. Boom, boom. So here's the book right here. Most people I wrote, most people who follow Zacharias Sitchin believe that the Igigi were a group of deities in ancient Mesopotamia, particularly in Sumerian and Akkadian texts. They were considered lesser gods, often serving higher ranking deities like the Anunnaki. So, like I said, you can use the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, ETCSL, which is online. You just go to Google and type in ETCSL and look for where it says electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, or you can buy the book, which I was talking about, which is this book, The Literature of Ancient Sumer. You can go in here and go to the back of the book and look in to see Anuna, which is the same thing as an Anunnaki, because the Akkadians are the ones that call them Anunnaki. Anuna is what the Sumerians actually called them. But anyway, they were a collective name for the gods, right? You go to the next one, the Gigi, and you can see where it says a collective name for the great gods. So that means the Igigi were considered great gods, and the Nuna weren't. So that's my way of trying to show you guys what I mean by providing facts over what that bull crap people be saying. And like I said, I'm not gonna try to get past this part too much, but the too many people believe that the Anuna / Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru because Zacharias Sitchin, and I would continue to do videos on it. I know Billy Carson goes around and says that a lot, and he made a movie about the Anunnaki. So of course, to keep his funds running, he ain't trying to hear anything else. I actually have. Oh my God, man, dang. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Like I said, I don't want to say nothing incorrect. So let me see if I can look it up here. If I can't, I'll have to do it the same way with my computer again. And I don't want to have to do that, but I will if I have to. Man, I don't know why it does that now, but let's see. Oh man, but yeah. Let's see. Here we go. All right, so let me bring this up because I don't want people thinking I'm bullshitting. So I just found this interesting. He put up a post. He says, I don't have followers, I have leaders. Thank you for your support. Of course, I had to come at him because I said a leader knows that Anuna came from the depths of the sea. And I say that because he always talks about how he's one of the smartest individuals and he knows how to read the language and this, that, and the third. And it really irritates me that he thinks he can fool everybody. And I think that's very disrespectful to the people that actually are trying to find out who these Anunnaki are when he's sitting up here lying and still showing and giving out incorrect information. So, of course, I said no uniform tablet from Mesopotamia mentions that Anuna and Anunnaki coming from a planet named Nibiru. However, the tablets do say they came from the depths of the sea. Of course, I gave him a source. This is what I was talking about, depths of the sea, the Oxford Handbook of Cuneiform Culture. And I gave the quote that's actually written in there. Okay. And you can see, according to Mesopotamian tradition, these big fish are the companions of the god of wisdom, Enki Ea, who dwells in the depths of the sea. They regularly emerge from the sea in order to teach mankind the cornerstones of civilization, such as agriculture, kingship, justice, and writing. Before the flood ended their coexistence. Okay, like I always say, I always like to bring sources and facts to the table. I don't want to sit up here and argue about, who's right, who's wrong. I'm just telling you, look, this is what I said, or this is what I read. So he said, actually, that's incorrect. The oldest version of the Enuma Elish mentions Nibiru as the destroyer of Tiamat. Now, where in here does it say anything about a story? What I mean by a story is where does anywhere in what I said that this book said where the story came from. Because this is where it's interesting. The Apkallu, this is what I was talking about, was certainly also painted in antiquity, perhaps in a very similar way to the artist recorded. Now, this is where it's interesting because we call them app. This is what he calls them. This is what it's from the cuneiform. But then you got the Anuna/Anunnaki, so it gets really confusing, right? But nothing in here says what version I was giving it from, right? But let's go to the Enuma Elish. Okay, the Enuma Elish is not even Sumerian. Okay, and I know he likes to say the Sumerians said that they came from a planet Nibiru. Well, guess what? There is no, um, uh, I guess you can say, fully intact cuneiform tablets from the Sumerian time frame. I'm not talking about what their writing system was. I'm talking about time frame. Okay, the Numa Elish is actually Babylonian. Okay, legit is Babylonian. And then of course I have another comment that came on there, and this person agrees with me, right? Because Billy Carson talks about gold coming from Nibiru and blah blah blah. And this is what's interesting. A lot of people don't know this. So Babylonians called Jupiter Nibiru sometimes. Now this is where I like to say it really. I commented back on Under Dolly, and I said, of course, I said I really don't understand why people still believe this about that. And then I come from planet Nibiru. The Sumerians are quite different from the Babylonians, despite some similarities. Their beliefs show far more differences, and that's just facts. And of course, Billy Carson uh, bought my book, which I think, but this is what a lot of people have said that they believe is the most accurate book. And if you ever bought the Zachariah Sitchin book, The Lost Book of Enki, you can see it's literally open inside fiction mythology. You can see I have all his books right here, right? Like I just pulled the book out. You can see I've read his books, and you can see I have tabs on them. I mean, it's not that many on this because by the time you read when you read all these and you get to the last book of Enki, you're just like, okay, it's just repeated stuff. But there is no planet Nibiru. Okay, um, there is or at least we don't have anything that gives us 100 facts on it. Like we don't have anything that from a cuneiform or anything like that actually says planet Nibiru. You know what I'm saying? That's just that's Zachariah Sitchin's interpretation, and then people like Billy Carson who wants to believe that. Let's see. Let me see. Okay, yeah, I did read that. Okay, yeah, so the next page I was going to. All right, here we go. The Sumerian gods, as illustrated graphically by the Sumerian myths, were entirely anthropomorphic. Even the most powerful and most knowing among them were conceived as human in form, thought, indeed. Hey, I'm going to go grab something and drink real quick. My throat's kind of scratchy. All right, I'm back. All right. Get me a drink. I'm drinking them Jaritos. All right, here we go. Okay, yeah, I already read that. That's the anthropomorphic stuff. All right. So this is what's interesting. Of all these hundreds of deities, the four most important were the heaven god An, An or On, the air god Enlil, the water god Enki, and the great mother goddess Ninhursag. Okay, here we go. There is a good reason to believe that An, the heaven god, was at one time conceived by the Sumerians to be supreme ruler of the pantheon, although in our available sources reaching to about 2500 BC. Now that's interesting because guess what? The Sumerian civilization started around 3200 BC. Just want to verify something real quick. But it's interesting. Yep, there we go. Just want to make sure our audio is still working. Okay, let's see. From later myths and hymns, we learned that Enlil was conceived to be a most beneficent deity who was responsible for the planning and creation of most productive features of the cosmos. It's pretty interesting. The third of the leading Sumerian deities was Enki, the god in charge of the abyss, or in Sumerian, the Abzu. Enki was the king of wisdom. Hold up now. Hold on. Hold on. I just want to make sure what I'm yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because I don't want to be stupid. So look, I know for a fact that Billy Carson knows who Samuel Noah Kramer is. I know for a fact he knows who he is. I know for a fact that he's read his material. If you read this book, I'm going to read it again. The third of the leading Sumerian deities was Enki, the god in charge of the abyss, Abyss, or in Sumerian, the Abzu. I'm going to try something real quick. Hold on. I want to try something real quick. I want to do it because I like to use. I want to go back to using AI in my stuff because it was actually pretty cool using it last time. So here we go. I got to bring this over here. Test. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's on your mind?
All right. So I want you to help me understand what is being said by this sentence. The third of the leading Sumerian deities was Enki, the god in charge of the abyss, or in Sumerian, the Abzu, spelled Abzu. What is an Abzu? Abzu.
In the sentence, the abyss refers to Abzu, spelled Abzu, which in Sumerian mythology represents both a primordial cosmic body and a god. Here's a breakdown. Abzu literally means primeval water or freshwater abyss in Sumerian. It is depicted as a vast, deep body of water beneath the earth, considered the source of all freshwater, like rivers, lakes, and groundwater. In Sumerian mythology, Enki, also known as Ea in Akkadian, is the god who oversees the Abzu. He is associated with wisdom, water, and creation. In essence, the Abzu is a cosmic sacred body of water that represents the origin of life and fertility in the universe, and Enki's dominion over it signifies his power over creation and wisdom. So it's not just a physical space, but also a symbol of the deep, mysterious waters from which life springs.
The depths of the sea. That's why they're in fish suits. Moving along. Fourth among the creating deities, with of course, I talked about Ninher Saga, which is also known as Ninma. So what I skipped. So I skipped on. So which was the second one that they had in here? Because I didn't tap it, but we already know who it is. And Enki Enlil. Okay, so I'm not. All right, I just wanted to make sure I got back to the page. Okay, here we go. In one of our okay, so we're talking about Ninher Saga, Ninma, right? The exalted lady, the fourth among the creating deities. Okay, the mother goddess. This is what it says, found it in this paragraph. In one of her myths, she plays an important role in the creation of man. And in another, she starts a chain of divine births in Dilmun, Dilmun, the paradise of the gods. which lead up to the forbidden fruit motive. So that's when I did an article on the Garden of Eden, I included Dillman in there because a lot of people was like, well, where's the Garden of Eden and blah, blah, blah. And where do you get the forbidden fruit information from? Well, if you know about Sumerian texts, it's literally Dillman. Dillman is actually where we get the forbidden fruit story from. This is not me saying it. This is what Samuel Noah Kramer says in his book, Their History, the Sumerians, Their History, Culture, and Character. And that's why when I go into different places and I explain, because I'm very, very familiar with the Sumerian history. I love the Sumerian history, the religion and everything. And when I go into these places and when people talk about the forbidden fruit and from the Bible, I say, hey, Dilmun, or whatever, however people want to say. I heard so many different times the forbidden fruit comes from that area. Um, I know it says here leads up to the forbidden fruit. So this is where the origin story would have started from. It might have not been it has in quotations forbidden fruit. So it could have been anything that was forbidden, which led to another idea of the forbidden fruit. But that's what I do. I just shared this part, and I think it's interesting because it's just something that a lot of people don't know about. And when I do bring it up, some people will argue with me and say that I'm wrong, but I'm just like, I'm reading it from somebody that's very respected. So don't tell me I'm wrong. Just tell me the source is wrong. But give me a source that tells me how I am wrong, because a lot of the texts that I do read backs this up. But in addition to these four leading deities, there were three important astral deities: the moon god Nana, who is also known by the name of Sin, which is probably of Semitic origin. Nana's son, the sun god Utu, and Nana's daughter, the goddess Inanna, known to the Semites as Ishtar. Okay. I also done an article on Ishtar, Inanna, also known as um, Inanna. Uh, the the she's supposed to be known as the what was it Queen of Heaven. And I also learned, and that most people also already should know, that the Virgin Mary was known as the Queen of Heaven. So there are a lot of people say they have a lot of similarities, or could possibly be one and the same. It may be that it is this group of seven deities, and in the Enki Narhasaga Nanasin Utu and Inanna, that is referred to as the seven deities who decree fate. Okay, turning from God to man, we find that the Sumerian thinkers, okay, in line with their worldview, had no exaggerated confidence in man and his destiny. They were firmly convinced that man was fashioned of clay and created for one purpose only: to serve the gods by supplying them with food, drink, and shelter so that they might have full leisure for their divine activities. Man's life was beset with uncertainty and haunted by insecurity, since he did not know beforehand the destiny decreed him by the unpredictable gods. When he died, his emasculated spirit descended to the dark, dreary netherworld, where life was but a dismal and wretched reflection of its earthly counterpart. Interesting. Just let me read this part again. They were firmly convinced that man was fashioned of clay and created for one purpose only: to serve the gods by supplying them with food, drink, and shelter. They don't say shit about gold yet. But I'm going to say it one more time, because some people in the back probably ain't hear what I said. They were firmly convinced that man was fashioned of clay and created for one purpose only: to serve the gods by supplying them with food, drink, and shelter. Got to have cuneiforms to back up what you say. Got to have cuneiforms. Turning from mortals, ordinary and extraordinary, to the immortal gods, it would seem that the netherworld would be the last place to look for their undying presence. Nevertheless, we find quite a number of deities there, and while some seem to belong there, as it were, others were originally sky gods condemned to the netherworld by the Sumerian mythographers as a result of theological speculation and invention. As of today, however, only a few of the relevant myths have been recovered, and except for one, all concern the ambitious Inanna and her unfortunate spouse, Dumuzi. The one exception is the myth Enlil and Ninlil, birth of the moon god, which tells how Enlil himself, the most powerful of the Sumerian gods and the chief of the Sumerian pantheon, was banished to the netherworld and followed thither by his wife Ninlil. This myth is also significant as the sole source for the Sumerian belief that there was a man devouring river which had to be crossed by the dead, as well as a boatman who ferried the dead across to their destinations, a belief prevalent throughout the ancient Near Eastern and Mediterranean world. Next tab. The dead seem to have been arranged in a hierarchy, so that the dead has an hierarchy, like the living, and no doubt that the highest seats were assigned to the dead kings and to high priestly officials who had to be taken care of with special sacrifices by such of the deceased as Gilgamesh and Namu. There were all kinds of rules and regulations in the netherworld. It was the deified. Okay, and it was the deified Gilgamesh who saw to it that the denizens of the netherworld conducted themselves properly. So Gilgamesh was in charge of that. Pay attention, people. Pay attention. So when you hear that bull crap, when people say, "Oh, the government was looking for Gilgamesh's tomb and they found it in Afghanistan and blah blah blah," they're basically saying that what they found the devil. Which anything, and if you know anything about Gilgamesh, man, that dude was a tyrant. That dude was not a good king. He was a horrible king. Some people probably, a lot of men, I'm telling you, a lot of men who were married or getting married to their significant other, what had to happen to their wives beforehand by Gilgamesh. Yeah, you better believe they thought he was the devil. Whereupon Enlil calls his visor Nusku, Nusku, and tells him of his desire for the lovely Ninlil. Hold on, let me see. Hold on. Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I read this part because this is I don't want to use the word because it's going on YouTube and it's um I was just talking about Gilgamesh and the story, and I was trying to avoid the word for that. So Enlil, before he got married to Ninlil, the R word is it says, and Enlil R word Ninlil while sailing on the stream and impregnates her with the moon god Sin. Okay, and this is what the gods are dismayed by his immortal deed. And although Enlil is their king, they seize him and banish him from the city to the netherworld. So Enlil went to the netherworld uh, for his what was the word? Immortal deeds. Um, so next tab, and that's another thing. Uh, all these kings doing what they did. I mean, let's not forget about. I was talking about. We're talking about Iraq, Mesopotamia. Um, um, uh, Dang, what was Uday and Kusay from Saddam Hussein's sons? You know, crazy stuff. So, look, Dilmun, I was talking about this stuff earlier, this place earlier. Dilmun is a land that is pure, clean, and bright, a land of the living which knows neither sickness nor death. What is lacking, however, is the fresh water, so essential to animal and the plant life. The great Sumerian water god Enki therefore orders you, the sun god, to fill it with the fresh water brought up from earth. Dilmun is thus turned into a divine garden, green with fruit laden fields and meadows. So the Garden of Eden, like I said. And so when people say they talk about the Garden of Eden, and if you want to talk about the Mesopotamian Garden of Eden, I can tell you one for sure that I would tell you that I know of is Dilmun. Dilmun. I mean, there's more, but when I read the part earlier, quotation marks, forbidden fruit, that's just easier for me to remember. You know what I'm saying? And there's plenty of other ones, but that's the one that I'm going to go with because it's the source that I know that gives me more about the forbidden fruit. Okay, here we go. But perhaps the most interesting result of our comparative analysis of the Sumerian poem, which you're talking about, let's see which poem is they talking about. Because this is a tab. Um, Hold on, I'm trying to find it. There's a. And I don't want to have to read this whole thing. So okay, so most of everything that I just said. Okay, I'm just going to read this tab. All right, but perhaps the most interesting result of our comparative analysis of the Sumerian poem. So there's just a Sumerian poem that I can't. I'm trying to find it. Um, Trying to scan through it real quick. Let's see. Okay, maybe I'll say it in here then. It says is the explanation which it provides for one of the most puzzling motives in the biblical paradise story. The famous passage describing the fashioning of Eve, the mother of all living, from the rib of Adam. For why a rib? Why did the Hebrew storyteller find it more fitting to choose a rib rather than any other organ of the body for the fashioning of the woman whose name Eve, according to the biblical notion, means approximately she who makes live? The reason becomes quite clear if we assume a Sumerian literary background, such as the represented by our Dilmun poem, to underlie the biblical paradise tale. For in our Sumerian poem, one of Enki's sick organs is the rib. Now, the Sumerian word for rib is ti, pronounced T, like Tee. The goddess created for the healing of Enki's rib was therefore called in Sumerian Ninti, Ninti, the lady of the rib. But the Sumerian word Ti also means to make live. The name Ninti may thus mean the lady who makes live, as well as the lady of the rib. In Sumerian literature, therefore, the lady of the rib came to be identified with the lady who makes the live through what may be termed a play on words. It was this one of the most ancient of literary puns, which was carried over and perpetrated in the biblical paradise story. Although thereof, of course, the pun loses its validity since the Hebrew words for rib and who makes live have nothing in common. So that's, to me, that's interesting. I mean, just think about that for a second. Most people talk about ribs and these where these gods come from, and what was the recipe for building humans and this, that, and the third. And I just read to you, what's interesting. Why was the rib chosen? Well, because Enki had a sick rib, the lady healed him, and bada boom, bada bang. Okay, there we go. Here we go. This is at the end of that, all that what I just said. So that was pretty long what I read. You go back and listen to it, check it out. Yeah. So there's another Enki Ninhursag myth concerned with the creation of man from clay that is over the abyss. Okay. The story begins with a description of the difficulties of the gods in procuring their bread, especially as might have been expected after the female deities had come into being. The gods complained, but Enki, who, as the Sumerian god of wisdom, might have been expected to come to their aid, is lying asleep in deep, and fails to hear them. Thereupon his mother, the primeval sea, I'm going to read that again. Thereupon his mother, the primeval sea, I'm going to read that again. Thereupon his mother, the primeval sea. I'm going to read that one more time because probably Billy Carson didn't actually get this part. And that's why he believes they came from a planet Nibiru outside of our solar system, or our atmosphere, I should say. But like I said, he knows who Samuel Noah Kramer is, and if he's as intelligent that I am hoping that he is, and it's easy for you to make a mistake and come to your senses for things. Thereupon, his mother, the primeval sea, the mother who gave birth to all the gods, brings the tears of the gods before Enki, saying, "Oh, my son, rise from your bed, from your bed, from your work. What is wise? Fashion servants of the gods, may they produce their doubles." And you can read this story actually in electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, which I shared. So um, the seas, people, the seas, the seas, the seas. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, "Yeah, well, the universe is actually the seas, the sea of out there, right?" And I agree with you. I agree with you. But when it says rose from the depths of the seas and not flown in from the depths of the seas, is a lot different to me when you put it that way. So yeah, this, like I said, from the depths of the seas. Except for references to mankind as a whole, mortals play little role in Sumerian myths. In addition to the Shakalatuda myth had just recounted, there is only one other myth involving a mortal. This is the long known flood story, so important for comparative biblical studies. Unfortunately, only one tablet inscribed with this myth has been excavated to date, and only 1/3 of this tablet has been preserved. The beginning of the myth is broken away, and the first intelligible lines concern the creation of men, vegetation, and animals, the heavenly origin of the kingship, the founding and naming of 5 antediluvian cities, which are presented to 5 tutelary deities. Next, we learned that a number of deities are bitter and unhappy because of divine decision to bring the flood and destroy mankind. Zia Sutra, the Sumerian counterpart of the biblical Noah, is then introduced in the story as a pious, God fearing king who is constantly watching for divine dreams and revelations. I'm going to say that one more time. Who is constantly watching for divine dreams and revelations. One more time. Who is constantly watching for divine dreams and revelations. Look, I always talk about all these things come from their visions. Okay. And I always say, when you read the Bible for what it is, and it says the words and visions, look up what visions mean in the etymological dictionary. Look at the origins of what vision means. You're going to see something that's going to shock you. It ain't what you see with your 2 eyes, but I'll let you go ahead and do that research because I'm trying to get out of hand on this right now. But I'm going to say it one more time. God fearing king who is constantly watching for divine dreams and revelations. He stations himself by a wall where he hears the voice of a deity, probably Enki, informing him. We're going to say that one more time. Probably Enki. Probably Enki. Probably, people, probably. Okay. And I say that because everybody says it was Enki, it was Enki. And some people are saying probably. And Samuel Noah Kramer used the word probably. So it may have not even been Enki in the first place. But it says Enki informing him of the decision taken by the assembly of the gods to send a deluge and destroy the seed of mankind. The myth must have continued with detailed instructions to Zio Sutra to build a giant boat and thus save himself from destruction. But all this is missing because of a rather large break in the tablet. So that's made up, people. That part that's broken up, you're making it up. When the text resumes, we find that the flood and all its violence has already come upon the earth, where it rages for 7 days and nights. At the end of that time, the sun god Utu comes forth, lighting and warming up the earth. And Zia Sutra prostrates himself before him and offers him sacrifice of oxen and sheep. The last extant lines of the myth describe the deification of Zia Sutra, also known as Noah. After he had prostrated himself before An and Enlil, he was given life like a god and transported to Dilmun, the divine paradise land, the place where the sun rises. So is that so? Did the Dilmun flood, or was it not flooded? Questions, questions, questions. Next tabs. Okay, these 2 tabs are together. Okay, I have to read it from this part. Once upon a time, a tree, perhaps a willow tree, planted on the bank of the Euphrates and nurtured by its waters, was uprooted by the south wind and carried away on the waters of the Euphrates. There it was, seen by the goddess Inanna, who was roving about in the vicinity, terrified for some unexplained reason by the word of an An and Enlil, the two leading deities of the Sumerian pantheon. Inanna took the tree in her hand and brought it to her city Ur, where she planted it in her fruitful garden. There she tended it carefully in the hope that when the tree had grown big, she could make of its wood a throne and couch for herself. And these are where the two tablets start at. Years passed, the tree matured and grew big, but its trunk stood bare without branch or leaf. For at its base, the snake who knows no charm had built its nest in its crown. The fierce Amdugud bird had placed its young, and in the middle, the vampire Lilith. Now, this is where it gets interesting because I always talk about um, where do vampires come from, right? And Lilith was actually uh, described as a vampire. Where was it? Where did I read it at? Where was it? Mm-mm. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay. Okay, here we go. Read it. It says, the Amdu good bird had placed its young, and in the middle, the vampire Lilith had built her house. And so Inanna, the lighthearted and ever joyful, shed bitter tears. I just want you to understand that Lilith was known as a vampire, everybody. That's if you want to know where the oldest written ancient text about vampires come from. It comes from the Sumerians. And we have to remember that the Sumerians are considered the oldest civilization because of their writing system. Here we go. Let's go. As dawn broke and her brother, the sun god Utu, came forth from his princely field, and Nana tearfully told him all that had befallen her Hulupu tree, but the willow tree. But Utu would do nothing to help her. And Nana then repeated her plaint, Plaint, to her brother, and it says in quotation marks, Gilgamesh, and he decided to stand by her. And he put on his armor and so on, and he fought and got rid of it, basically. Um, so that's basically the. I want to see, yeah, all this is next about Gilgamesh. It's not tabbed up, but this is interesting because, like I said, vampires. The next time you watch a movie about vampires, know that the Sumerians talked about vampires, and Lilith was the first vampire. Here, let me see something real quick. Hey, test. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's up?
Hey, did Samuel Noah Kramer talk about how Lilith was a vampire?
Samuel Noah Kramer, a prominent scholar of Sumerian culture and mythology, did indeed discuss Lilith, but his focus was more on her role in ancient Mesopotamian and Sumerian mythology rather than labeling her as a vampire. Lilith, in later traditions, became associated with vampiric and demonic traits, especially in Jewish folklore, but her original Mesopotamian roots don't specifically link her to vampirism. In Sumerian texts, Lilith appears as a demoness or night spirit, often associated with storms and wildness, and she is linked to dangerous female spirits or night demons. Kramer in his work typically focused on Sumerian mythological figures, and Lilith wasn't as central in his discussions as deities like Inanna or Enki. However, her role evolved over time, especially in the Hebrew Bible and later medieval texts, where she became more associated with the vampiric archetype, likely influenced by her connection to night and seductive powers. So, while Kramer might not have called Lilith a vampire in the way modern pop culture does, He did discuss her as a dangerous, shadowy figure in ancient myth. The vampire association really took shape much later.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you what Samuel Noah Kramer actually wrote in his book, The Sumerians, Their History, Culture, and Character. And it's on page 198. And he actually says, and I'll read it to you. He said, "For at its base, the snake who knows no charm had built its nest. In its crown, the fierce Amdugud, spelled Imdugud, bird, had placed its young, and in its middle, the vampire Lilith had built her house."
Ah, I see what you're referencing. You're right. Samuel Noah Kramer does mention Lilith in the Sumerians on page 198, and in this context, he describes her as a vampire. In this particular passage, Kramer describes a mythological scene where Lilith is placed among other dangerous and supernatural creatures, such as the
Stop,
snake
stop, stop,
and
stop,
the
stop,
fierce
stop, stop,
Amdugud
stop, stop,
bird.
stop, stop, stop,
The
stop.
reference to Lilith as a vampire reflects her association with
Stop.
darkness, danger, and predatory characteristics, which can indeed be interpreted as vampiric in a metaphorical sense. This is quite an interesting point because, as mentioned earlier, her later
Hold on.
associations with vampirism are more commonly found in Jewish folklore. But here, Kramer is bringing her into a broader context with similar nightmarish traits. Kramer's choice of words could be seen as tying into the ancient view of Lilith as a dangerous and seductive figure who posed threats to children and men, and in some myths even appeared as a night demon. So, to answer your question directly, yes, Kramer does describe her in a way that could be interpreted as vampiric, fitting with later traditions that link Lilith to vampires, even though the concept of a vampire as we know it today wasn't fully formed in ancient Mesopotamian myth. It's fascinating how these mythological figures evolve over time.
Let's see. Trying to show you, where is it at? What tab is it? Tab is. Let's go. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. Vampire right there.
It seems like you're trying to
Oh,
navigate something. Are you looking for a specific location or tab in a digital version of Kramer's book?
it's right there.
If you're using a PDF or e reader, I can help guide you through finding the passage, but I don't have direct access to digital files. Could you clarify what you're referring to with tab? That might help me assist you better.
I just got what you did. So basically, I'm glad that happened. So you basically just repeated what I said because I shared you. You didn't really know that Kramer talked about vampires in the book. He actually uses the word vampire. So um, if you're going to, if you're not sure about something, you have to just say, "Hey, I'm not sure." Okay, don't be trying to just give me some shit that you want me to believe.
You're absolutely right, and I appreciate your honesty. When I'm unsure about something, I should definitely say so instead of trying to fill in the gaps. In this case, I should have acknowledged that I didn't have access to the specific passage you were referring to, and I should have been clearer in my response. I'm glad we got on the same page, and I'll make sure to be more careful about that in the future.
I
Thanks
just,
for pointing it out.
I just wanted to show something that, if I was like, this is what I did this for a reason. So when I said when I go into spaces on Twitter or X and or chats and stuff like that, and I share my knowledge, I'm usually reading from a book, right? And most of the time, I try to say it. I try to quote it exactly and then say it in my words only. But when I say that Lilith was the first vampire, according to ancient written text, um, from the Sumerians, this is why I say it. So when I say this stuff, people will go on to ChatGPT and Google and Grok and whatnot and be like, "Did Samuel Noah Kramer say they were vampires?" And they'll be like, "No, that's not true." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "Yo, I got the goddamn book in my hand. Like, I'm reading what Samuel Noah Kramer actually said. So telling me that I'm wrong is obviously you just want to argue with me, and I love arguing. So I'm gonna prove my point right because, like I said, you can see. See, let's try this again. Because, like I said, you can see right there. It says vampire, PIRE, and then you can see where it says Vam right there. Vampire Lilith and built her house, right? So, like I said, hold up. When I say something, I'm just giving you the sources. I'm not. I read too much to be sitting up here trying to rant. Here we go. Oh, that wasn't it. Oh shoot, I jumped too many space. There we go. So what I'm doing is trying to. Okay, this is called the first elegy. Elegy. Um, I guess it's part of the poems, but or not. Well, text. So let me. So this is the tab that I'm gonna go over actually right here. So this is the tab right here. In the tab, the reason why I'm going over this tab is because a lot of people know about the Bible story Ezekiel, and they know about the wheels inside of the wheels, right? A lot of people know about that. But in the first elegy, Elegi, excuse me, my allergies is coming back for some reason. Just got done stop raining. But here we go. It says wheels question mark about you like a whirlwind for joy. Now let me see something. Hey, test. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's on your mind?
Hey, what is the scripture that talks about the Ezekiel wheel? And can you share what it says for me, and make sure you use a source?
The scripture that refers to the Ezekiel wheel is found in Ezekiel 1:15-21 in the Old Testament of the Bible. This passage describes a vision Ezekiel had where he saw wheels associated with divine beings. Here's the passage from the New International Version for clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Open quote, Ezekiel 1:15-21. 15. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its four faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all four looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel, intersecting a wheel. So as they moved, they would go in any one of the four directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not turn about as the creatures went. 18. Their rims were high and awesome, and all four rims were full of eyes all around. 19. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved. And when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. 21. When the creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved. And when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Close quote. This vision is part of a larger divine encounter that Ezekiel describes, often interpreted as a symbolic representation of God's power, mobility, and the heavenly realm. The wheels are often seen as mysterious, supernatural phenomena associated with the movement of the cherubim, divine beings, and God's glory. The imagery of the wheel within a wheel has fascinated many and has been interpreted in.
All right, we're just gonna close that out. I don't want to hear it no more. But yeah. So that right there. So when I hear wheels and about you like a whirlwind for joy, you can do whirlwind. Oh shoot! Hold up, stop. Let me. Yeah, I got that going on. I know it's listening to me. The whirlwind can be like the four corners of the earth when it moves around. So that's where it's interesting. Let's go to the next tab. Next tab's way out there. It's all with. Okay, this talks about Lilith again, and okay, so yeah, so and then turns to her brother Yutu for help when her sacred tree in Eric is invaded by the snake. So you got Gilgamesh came to her help, and Yutu. Uh, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Um, okay, so here we go. This is what I like. I'm about to hit some people with some really cool stuff with this one. Okay, so at least the time of the third dynasty of Ur, the Sumerians, the sons of Sumer, are known as the Blackheads and brothers. So the Blackheads in quote and brothers is in quote. Now, when you hear two black people usually talking, they always like, "Hey, brother, what's going on?" You know, that's an old school black thing that people used to do. I know everybody uses it now today, but brothers is brothers and sisters. Some of y'all will get that, some of y'all won't. And that's why it's interesting because they're known as the blackheads and they're also known as brothers. So when people say the Sumerians are known as the black-headed people, I just say they're known as brothers. What's the difference? Um, a lot of people don't know that. They'll always say, "Oh, the Sumerians, they're known as the black-headed people." Well, some of y'all know what Kramer says: the blackheads and brothers. Blackheads for some people, brothers in other texts. So we're just gonna go with that. Okay, yeah, the land Dilmun to which we now turn seems to have been in more intimately related to Sumer than Magan, Magan, and Maluha. Now, I want to make sure some things because okay, yep, that's what okay. So yeah, just wanted to and Malu. Let me see, look at this one. Okay, yep. So of course, you have Dilmun's in one place, and Magan and Maluha are in two different places, and one of them is in East Mesopotamia or modern day Iraq, and then Magan was now modern day Oman and what is known as the United Arab Emirates. Let's see. Okay, so inhabiting the four corners of the earth were the Namlulu, this is a Sumerian compound word probably consisting of lu, man, reduplicated, and the particle nam used to form abstract nouns. It therefore corresponds to formation to the English mankind. The Sumerian people, the Blackheads, as they called themselves from at least 2000 BC on, were only a part of this larger mankind, but needless to say, a very important part. In fact, they were so important part that at least in one case, the blackheads seem to be identified with humanity as a whole. Thus, there is a passage in the first part of the long known Sumerian flood myth, which reads, let's see, after Ant, yeah, here we go. You can read this in the electronic text corpus Sumerian literature also because put it in there. I put the source up on my Twitter page, but it says after An, Enki, and Ninhursag have fashioned the black-headed people, vegetation luxuriated from the earth. Animals, four-legged creatures of the plain were brought artfully into existence. Here, then, blackheads seem to be juxtaposed with plants and animals as if the word referred to mankind as a whole. Again, according to the same flood myth, when the gods had decided to send down kingship on earth, they founded all the first five royals, cities in Sumer. And when the flood came to destroy the seed of mankind, it was the Sumerian king Zeusutra of Shorapak who was saved by the gods as the preserver of the name of vegetation and the seed of mankind. Now, I'm about to show you something real quick. So let me stop this one. Let me make sure I bring this up real quick first because it's going to be a lot of windows popping up. I'm going to go to ETCSL real quick to the actual home page. So, all right. So here's the website. So if I come here and if I type in Anunnaki, right? Oh shit, I spelled that wrong. So look, I put that in, right? You're going to get nothing, right? You're not going to get anything from there, right? Because the Sumerians didn't call them Anunnaki. Oh, let me make something very clear to you guys. Right here, it says Sumerian is the first language for which we have written evidence and its literature the earliest known. The electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, ETCSL, a project of the University of Oxford, comprises a selection of nearly 400 literary compositions recorded on sources which come from the ancient Mesopotamia, modern day Iraq, and date to the third and early second millennium BC. Okay. That's where it says. Okay. So now we go here and type in Anuna, Anuna. Boom. And you'll get everything about Anuna. Oops. Wrong button. My bad. Anuna. Now, here we go. Anuna. See? So let's go back here. Let me see if this works. Fashioned. Because I like to take shortcuts. I'm going to try to take a shortcut. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Too easy. Found it right here. So here's the transliteration of this, right? And this is kind of hard. I'm still trying to learn this. I get really confused. Let me, here we go. I clicked on it. Let me make sure I bring it up for you guys now. So this is the transliteration, right? Right. So we're going to go back to this, cut that one off. We're going to go back to this one right here. Let's make it bigger for y'all. So this book was written in, I want to say 1956, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, published in 1963. Published in 1963 is the other one. Would you read me? You heard what I read it, right? Here we go. Yeah. Sumerians had a flood myth too. Was it connected to the Younger Dryas? That's interesting. I absolutely love sharing my knowledge, Alex. This is something that I enjoy doing. It is interesting. They did have a flood story, and I'll show you in a second. It's actually so it's interesting you say that because what I'm about to read actually comes from this flood story section. Now I've already showed earlier the book, The Ancient Literature of Sumer, and that's where you can read this. And this is also like this website is the same thing for the book. You can see right here, it says, this is why I said earlier, you have to bring cuneiform tablet identifiers to the table and not just tell me what your opinion is. So the flood story cuneiform tablet identifier C.1.7.4 after An, Enlil, and Enki. After An, Enlil, Enki, and Ninhar Saga have fashioned the black-headed people, they also made animals multiply everywhere and made the herds of four-legged animals exist on the plains as is befitting. And then it says approximately 32 missing lines, right? So here's the flood story from the Sumerians. Sidon, okay, these dots and before it and after was broken and they couldn't translate. But in Sidon heaven flood mankind. So he made the Ninter, holy Inanna made a lament for its people. Enki took counsel with himself, and Enlil, Enki, and Nirhasaga made all the gods of heaven and earth take on oath by invoking An and Enlil. In those days, Zia Sutra, the king, the Gudug priest, he fashioned the humble, committed reverend, day by day, standing constantly, thing that was not a dream appeared conversation, taking an oath by invoking heaven and earth, and the Kier, the gods, a wall, Zia Sutra, standing at its side, heard the side wall standing at my left side. Side wall, I will speak words to you. Take heed of my words. Pay attention to my instructions. A flood will sweep over the blanks over here and all of the blanks over here. A decision that the seed of mankind is to be destroyed has been made. The verdict, the word of the divine dissimile cannot be revoked. The order announced by An and Enlil cannot be overturned. Their kingship, their term has been cut off. Their heart should be rested about this. Now, blank, what blank? Approximately 38 missing lines. So, yes, the Sumerians absolutely had a flesh story. Yeah, like I said, this is from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. You can go here. This project was 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. Last time it was updated was 2016, 1130. Like I said, so you got 2016 and you got Samuel Noah Kramer. So let me see something real quick while we're here. Um, mm, let's see. Hold on. I want to see something. Okay, yeah. So they give you this stuff hasn't been updated in a while, but they give you a lot of information. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Yeah, so it gives you the cuneiform writing, the transliteration, and it gives you further readings. I mean, this is a great website. I always tell people to use this. I mean, when you can literally come here. Let's see. Clay. Type in clay. You close. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Inky Ninma. Cuneiform tablet identifier C1.1.2. In those days, in the days when heaven and earth were created, in those nights, in the nights when heaven and earth were created, in those years, in the years when the fates were determined, when the Anuna gods were born, when the goddesses were taken in marriage, when the goddesses were distributed in heaven and earth, when the goddesses, blank, became pregnant and gave birth, when the gods were obliged, their food, dining halls, the senior gods oversaw the work, while the minor gods were bearing the toil. The gods were digging the canals and piling up the silt. In Haralai, the gods crushing the clay began complaining about this life. So gods were complaining. So so here we go. We'll continue. At the word of his mother, Nanma, Inky rose up from his bed and Hal and Kug, his room from pondering, he slapped his thigh in annoyance. The wise and intelligent one, the prudent of skills, the fashioner of the design of everything brought to life, birth goddesses. Inky reached out his arm over them and turned his attention to them. And after Inky, the fashioner of designs by himself, pondered the matter, he said to his mother, Nama, my mother, the creature you planned will really come into existence. Impose on him the work of carrying baskets. You should need clay from the top of the Abzu. The birth of goddesses will nip up the clay, and you shall bring the form into existence. Let Ninma act as your assistant, and let Ninma Esuziana, Nimara, Ninbarag, Nimag, and Ninguna stand by as you give birth. My mother, after you have decreed his fate, let Ninma impose on him the work of carrying baskets. She placed it on grass and purified the earth. Let's see. So this is where you get the creation of humans from clay. So you can see all the things that it says about clay on there. Let's type something else in there. Give me something. Somebody give me a message real quick. See, interesting. Did they build ships or arcs or anything? Did we have any kind of records? Let's see. They didn't build ships, but they definitely had boats. So let's see. Go to boats. Boom. Let the Delman boats be loaded with timber. Let the Maglan boats be loaded sky high. Let the Maglan boats of Melua transport gold and silver and bring them to Nibru for Enlil. Now look, I'm glad he said that. This is where gold is actually talked about for Nibru for Enlil, king of all the lands. Now, hold on. Let me see. Okay, yeah. Okay, this is the next one. This is where I'm glad this worked out perfectly. So there was a city. The one we live in. Nibru was the city, the one we live in. Der Giznimar was the city, the one we live in. Sala is its holy river. Kargestina is its quay. Kar Asar is its quay where boats make fast. Pulal is its fresh water well. Indunabar Tum is its branching canal, and one of measures from there it is cultivated land is 50 sar each way. Enlil was one of its young men, and Ninlil was one of its young women. Nunbarsi Guna was one of the wise old women. Let's see. So right here, Nibru was the city. Okay. There was a sitting. There was a city, the one we live in. Nibru was the city. Nibru wasn't a planet. Also, if you go look up Nibru, it is also known as Nippur, Nippur. And if you go in there and look at that, you will be able to see the relationship between Nibiru being a city on planet Earth and not a planet known to orbit the sun every 3,600 years. Okay. Ooh, let's type this in. This is the king's list. I just typed in 3,600 years. I know I forgot that I can type right here and it'll do stuff. Let's see. Golems. I don't think they mentioned golems, but let's see. I know what a golem is. I just want to make sure what's a good word in Sumerian. So golem in Sumerian would be okay, because I know it's an anthropomorphic being, and I talked about that, but let's see. I wanted to see if there's a word for it. Let's see. Oh, here, I forgot I can ask ChatGPT. Oh, I already took that thing down. I took them down. So let me see. I want to see. Let me see. Um. mm. Okay. So yeah. I was okay. That's right. That's perfect. That works for me. So let me see. I just want to make sure. Yeah, because you can see I already typed it in, right? So so I was already there. So yeah, to answer your question, I wanted to make sure I was looking up the right individual because I know I just seen your message right now. Gollum is made from clay. Yeah, absolutely. When you heard me talk earlier about humans being created by clay, some people would consider that a golem, but I wouldn't consider us a golem from being created by clay. So my next jump was Enkidu, because Enkidu to some uh, uh, historians was also made out of clay, and Enkidu was also supposed to be the individual that became Gilgamesh's best friend. Remember, he lived with the animals in the woods, and they actually sent a prostitute to Enkidu to bring him to human like characteristics, or not characteristics, like a personality, or just there's so many different ways that you could put it, but basically bring him into like a human like uh, individual. But Enkidu would be the next one that I would think is a golem, and that's why when you asked that question, I already had typed in Enkidu because I wanted to make sure that's the way that you would say it in Sumerian. Because, like I said earlier, if you type Anunnaki here, it won't bring anything up. You have to type it Anuna, Anuna, because that's what the Sumerians called it. So I wanted to make sure that I was using the right word. So yeah, to answer your question about that, Alex, I believe that if you want to go to the Gollum right way, and you want to uh, come up with, let me see something real. Oh, I can't. Oh yeah, let me do this. So Control F is another thing. No, so it won't have anything on there for clay. All right, so yeah, that would be the next uh individual that I would say, because that some people believe he was made from clay. I want to see something. All right, so where is it at? Okay, so I was trying to type in create in clay up here on the search bar to see if I could find something that would back that up. Um, I would probably have to go to uh, Andrew George's book, uh, The Epic of Gilgamesh. It would be um, a better source about Enkidu and Gilgamesh, because this uh, probably wouldn't have everything in there from that, because let me see something. Uh, okay, so oh man, I think I'm gonna spell it wrong. Yeah, I'm gonna spell it wrong because Gilgamesh is not Gilgamesh in the actual. There we go, Gilgamesh. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Not the H. Oh, come on. What the heck? You know what? I probably just have to copy this and put it in. Oh, see, it doesn't do that. Some of the stuff is just really hard to find because, like I said, spelling, even copying and pasting, even though you see it right here, it's the same thing. See, look, copy, paste. See, it's really hard to find some of that stuff, and that's why I said you have to go through almost all of it, and that's why I say just go to the book if you want. So yeah, good. Let's see. I want to see. Let's see. I'm just trying to go through all these different things. I do want to find it if it's in here. I'll have to just go to the book. But yeah, some people say Gilgamesh. So yeah, I'm glad you said that, Golems, because um now I know that I can go back to Enkidu, because I remember reading Andrew George, his book. They talk about how he was created from the gods, and they used clay for him also. So yeah, that's pretty. That's it. That's how I'm glad you caught that, because that helps me um, remember certain stuff. That definitely helped me. I want to type in Lilith real quick. See, yeah, they won't. Yeah, you just gotta. Well, you know what? There we go. Dylan. Let's see. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. So I'm just gonna keep that. Let me get back to this book before I get off track. So we almost done with this. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is what I found interesting, and this is in quotations. It says the second proverb reads literally, the Elamite is sick. His teeth are chattering. If the meaning is that the Elamite could not help wincing from pain, then it is clear that the Sumerians thought the Elamites to be crybabies and unmanly. I thought that was funny. There's no other reason why. Um, for me to do that. Uh, let's see. Okay, that's enough for that. Let's see. Let's go. Okay, hold on. Next tab is the next page. In the matter of scientific achievement, it is probably in the field of mathematics that the Sumerians made their major contribution to future generations by devising the sexagesimal system of place notation, which may have been the forerunner of the Hindu Arabic decimal system now in use. Traces of the Sumerian sexagesimal system exist even today in the measurement of the circle and angle by degrees, and in some of the weights and measurements that were current until relatively recent times. Yeah, we know about that. In the field of technology, the potter's wheel, the wheeled vehicle, and the sailboat are all probably Sumerian inventions. And while metallurgy is certainly not of Sumerian origin, the products of the Sumerian metal workers were dispersed all over the ancient Near East, and some even reached as far as Hungary and Central Europe. Now, this is what's interesting to me. The potter's wheel, the wheeled vehicle, and the sailboat are not probably Sumerian inventions. I just want to make that very clear. Because there's been evidence brought out since this book's been written that shows otherwise. But Samuel Noah Kramer does say that, but I'm glad he uses the word probably versus it is. Because some people will go out there and say, oh, yeah, I read Samuel Noah Kramer, and he says that the potter's wheel, the wheel vehicle, and sailboat are all Sumerian inventions. And I said, oh, you must have forgot the word probably. And they'll be like, what the hell that got to do with anything? Well, a lot, because probably. To be sure, even the earliest parts of the Bible, it is generally agreed, were not written down in their present from much earlier than 1000 BC, whereas most of the Sumerian literary documents were composed about 2000 BC or not long afterward. Let me say it one more time. 2000 BC. Now, the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, the book actually says 1800 BC, 1800th century BCE, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. I think I wrote it. And I'm pretty sure I put it on X. I don't want to do all that. Yeah, I'm not going to do all that because we're just going to go with okay. So it says around 1800 BC, BCE on the book actually, but here it says we're composed about 2000 BC. Okay, it's way after the Sumerian civilization. Creation of the universe. The Sumerians, like the ancient Hebrews, thought that a primeval sea had existed prior to creation. The universe, according to Sumerians, consisted of a united heaven and earth, engendered in some way in this primeval sea, and it was the air god Enlil, perhaps not unlike the Ruach Elohim of Genesis, who separated heaven and earth. Now, let me say that again. We are talking about the primeval sea. Okay. Primeval sea. Let me see something real quick. I want to look up the etymology of primeval real quick. Okay, yeah, I'm not even gonna have to do. So the earliest, I wanted to look up the etymology definition of primeval, and I just want to see if it changes anything that I already know. I just want to make sure. Let's see, primeval. All right, so let's pull this up real quick. Oops, wrong button. Share screen. So I always go to this website if I don't have the book next to me. But primeval, of or belonging to the first stage, right? Early in life, right? And I just wanted to make sure that when I see that. So when it says the first sea, the life of the sea, this is another creation of the universe. So creation of man is the next one. Man, according to both the Hebrews and the Sumerians, was conceived as having been fashioned of clay. So we're going back to the golem. Like I said earlier, oh man, it's not. There we go. Bring this back up. when I was talking about, humans being created out of clay, they could be considered golems, but I wouldn't do that. Um, this is you get the man, according to both the Hebrews and the Sumerians, was conceived as having been fashioned of clay, imbued with the breath of life. The purpose for which he was created was to serve the gods, or Yahweh. So it says Jahweh alone in the case of the Hebrews with prayer, supplication, and sacrifices. And then it says creation techniques. Creation, according to both biblical and Sumerian writers, was accomplished primarily in two ways: by divine command and by actual making or fashioning. In either case, the actual creation was preceded by divine planning, though this need not have been explicitly stated. Paradise. No Sumerian parallels to the story of Garden and Eden and the fall of man have yet been found. There are, however, several paradise motives that are significant for comparative purposes, including one that may help to clarify the rib episode in Genesis 2:21 to 23. Moreover, there is some reason to believe that the very idea of divine paradise, a garden of the gods, is of Sumerian origin. Page 147 to 149. Let me see. Let me go to page 147 and 149. Oh dang, I already went through all of those tabs like crazy. That's fast. All right, the flood. As has long been recognized, the biblical and Sumerian versions of the flood story show numerous obvious and close parallels. Noteworthy too is the fact that according to at least one Mesopotamian tradition, there were 10 antediluvian rulers, each with a lifespan of extraordinary length, which is reminiscent of some of the biblical antediluvian patriarchs. Okay, here we go. This is another interesting one. The Cain Abel motive, the rivalry motive depicted in the undoubtedly much abbreviated Cain Abel episodes of the Bible, was a high favorite with the Sumerian writers and poets. See pages 217 through 23, 217. I want to see because I know it. 217. Okay. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Just trying to read over, see if I can, if there's something that I need to read that's interesting. Nah, we don't have to. All right, here we go. The Tower of Babel and the dispersion of mankind. The story of the building of the Tower of Babel originated, no doubt, in an effort to explain the existence of the Mesopotamian ziggurats. I've always talked about that. To the Hebrews, these towering structures, which could often be seen in a state of ruin and decay, became symbols of man's feelings of insecurity and the not related lust for power, which brings upon him humiliation and suffering. It is most unlikely, therefore, that a parallel to this story will be found among the Sumerians, to whom the ziggurat represented a bond between heaven and earth, between God and man. On the other hand, the idea that there was a time when all peoples of the earth had one language and the same words, and that this happy state was brought to an end by an irate deity, may have parallel in Golden Passage, which is part of the Sumerian epic tale in Merkar and the Lord of Arata. The earth and its organization. The Sumerian myth, Enki and the world order, the organization of the earth and its cultural process, provides a detailed account of the activities of Enki, the Sumerian god of wisdom, in organizing the earth and in establishing what might be termed law and order on it. This poem has its biblical biblical echoes in, for example, Deuteronomy 32, 7 through 14. Or hear what it says about personal God. To judge from the covenant between God and Abraham, not to the reference to a God of Nahar in Genesis 31:53, the ancient Hebrews were familiar with the idea of a personal God. The belief in the existence of a personal God was involved by the Sumerians at least as early as the middle of the third millennium BC. According to Sumerian teachers and sages, every adult male and family head had his personal God or a kind of God, good angel, whom he looked upon as his divine father. The personal God was, in all probability adopted by the Sumerian paterfamilias as the result of an oracle or a dream or a vision involving a mutual understanding or agreement, not unlike the covenant between the Hebrew patriarchs of Yahweh, or Yahweh, most people would know. To be sure, there could have been nothing mutually exclusive about the covenant between the Sumerian and his tutelary deity, and in this respect, therefore, it differed very significantly from that between Abraham and his God. All that the Sumerian expected of his personal God was that he speak in his behalf and intercede for him in the assembly of the gods whenever the occasion demanded, and thus ensure for him a long life and good health. In return, he glorified his God and with special prayers, supplication, and sacrifices, although at the same time he continued to worship the other deities of the Sumerian pantheon. Nevertheless, as a Sumerian literary document, man and his God indicates there existed a close, intimate, trusting, and even tender relationship between the Sumerian and his personal God, one which bears no resemblance to that between Yahweh and the Hebrew patriarchs, and later days between Yahweh and the Hebrew people as a whole. So that's interesting. This is the last tab. Oh no, this is not the last one. Okay, it says this is, I guess, towards the end. So the origin and development of the cuneiform system of writing. The cuneiform system of writing was probably originated by the Sumerians. Listen to me. This is what Samuel Noah Kramer says. The cuneiform system of writing was probably originated by the Sumerians. The oldest inscriptions on earth today, more than 1,000 tablets and fragments from about 3000 BC, are in all likelihood written in the Sumerian language. Whether or not it was the Sumerians who invented the script, it was certainly they who, in the 3rd millennium BC, fashioned it into an effective writing tool. Its practical value was gradually recognized by the surrounding peoples who borrowed it from the Sumerians and adapted it to their own language. By the 2nd millennium BC, it was current throughout the Near East. So, the Sumerian cuneiform script began as a pictographic writing. Each sign was a picture of one or more concrete objects and represented a word whose meaning was identical with or closely related to the object picture. Nothing no different than emojis. I said that part. The defects of a system of this type are twofold: the complicated forms of the signs and the great number of signs required render it too unwieldy for practical use. The Sumerian scribes overcame the difficulty by gradually simplifying and conventionalizing the forms of the signs until the pictographic originals were no longer apparent. So, that should tell you right there. Look, number one, it says number one is a picture of a star. It represents the primary Sumerian word of an, heaven. The same sign is used to represent the word dinger, God, Dingir. Okay, so yeah, so this is what, so this, yeah, that was the last tablet. So this is the pictographic script right here. And that's what I was just about to read. What they're supposed to be. So not this one right here is God and the 8-pointed star. You can see how it changed from many times. Most people know. Oh man, I hate doing shit backwards. That one. Most people know that one, right? But look where it started at. Started there, and boom. And now you go to the cuneiform. Oh no. That one, boom. Trying to do shit backwards, isn't it? This number 7 is actually the black-headed people. Let me see. Let me make sure. I know this a little bit. Yeah, is also a picture of a head. The vertical strokes indicate the particle part of the head, which is intended, that is the mouth. The sign therefore represents the Sumerian word ka, marth, the sound Oh no, there we go. I'm reading the wrong one. Number 7 is a picture of a head represents the Sumerian word sag, which is head. So, like I said, I know a little bit of it because I studied this. I actually studied this, but see, you can see where it came. Number 7, the head. So, bada boom, bada bang. This is a great book to have. I highly recommend getting this book. Most people who know about the Sumerians um, know about Zachariah Sitchin more than they know about uh, Samuel Noah Kramer. So that I just find that funny. I'm about to go look to see what the next book is. I believe the next book that I'll be going over is the Dead Sea Scrolls from the Penguin Classics. I just want to verify. That's probably going to be a long one too, 2-part series. Yep, the complete Dead Sea Scrolls. And then after I do the complete Dead Sea Scrolls, I'm going to be going over Zachariah Sitchin's books. Ooh, that's going to be so fun. That's going to be so fun. But I'm about to end it. Hey, I appreciate you coming out, Alex, and seeing this. I'm about to jump on the Twitter space and buy some more time. Do some research, read something. Right now, actually, what I'm reading is this. I'm trying to break this down as much as I can. It's a book that has a description of the pictographs. So, like I always say, I always talk about pictographic script and all that other stuff. Well, I'm actually trying to study not just the Mesopotamians, the Hebrews, uh, the Indus Valley civilization. I'm also trying to learn the Mexican manuscript. So I have a lot of things on my plate that I just like sharing with people. And what I share with people, I actually bring to the table. I'll give you another one. If you ever know what this is the Mayan Codex, which I'm also learning and studying at the same time. So this book is nothing but stuff. So I literally be out here doing the damn thing, trying to give the information that people are asking and wondering. And, instead of me giving you my opinion, I'm bringing to you people who are respected in the field or in their fields. What is actually said and go from there. I mean, I just appreciate everybody coming out. Alex, hey, I love the questions. I learned something from you today, man. Golems could be Enkidu. I never actually thought about that, but I did know that when you asked that question about the clay thing, Enkidu definitely rang a bell. Of course, humans being created from clay and so on and so forth. I talked about that, but yeah, I appreciate you coming in and bringing that and sharing that, because now when we talk about golems or golems, however you want to say them, I'll be able to say, well, hey, guess what? The Sumerians have that. Guess who that was? And I actually did an article on Enkidu because he is the first description of what we would consider a Bigfoot, right? Human-like individual, because Bigfoot stands on his, on his 2 legs, and the only thing that he has more than us, or what it has more than us, is hair all over. But some people would definitely say, that Enkidu is the first description of possibly of a Bigfoot living out there in the woods with the animals and so on and so forth. So I appreciate everything. Y'all keep it up. It's on the